Today we're privileged to host Fletus Poston, who is a seasoned cybersecurity professional. Fletus is seasoned IT and security professional with a career spanning since the mid-2000s, when he began as an intrusion detection handler. Throughout the years, he has managed cybersecurity initiatives in various industries, including finance, utilities, software development, and Fletus holds a master's degree in information systems, specializing in information assurance, alongside a range of certification. These are quite a peripheral of them. There is SISP, SSAP, GISF, GSEH, SES, to mention but a few. Fletus, you're welcome.
Glad to be here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Please tell us about yourself and
Sure.
your experience.
So, as Angela alluded, done this for a few years now. Cut my teeth with security, doing IDS work, so intrusion detection system, before moving into an audit role, doing IT audit at a bank, and then moved into a regulated utility where I did IT service management, web application monitoring, and electronic document management. During my time on the electronic document management team, I got the itch to put security back into my daily work. And so I picked up the identity and access management piece of our enterprise tooling, supporting several hundred AD groups, dozens of process accounts and service accounts, and then decided let's go back and get my master's. So started my master's degree in 2013, and then put cybersecurity back into my title in 2015 as a cyber systems engineer for the regulated utility. When I left them in 2022, I had approximately 15 engineers reporting up underneath me, and we managed anything from the endpoint, cloud, SOAR, SIEM, pretty much anything from a SOC point of view. My engineering team was supporting. In 2022, I took over as the senior manager for a company called CrashPlan, who does backup and recovery for endpoint and SaaS products. So I manage IAM, so identity access management, threat and vulnerability management, application security, and security operations as part of my day job. Today, also during that time frame, I started interacting and working as a faculty research advisor for the SANS Institute, where I help grad students research, present their paper and their presentations to complete their capstone class as at the sans.edu organization. In addition, I also am a teacher assistant for several of their GX certifications that was listed during my intro. So I serve as a teaching assistant TA for several of the SANS classes as well.
I'm sure with all your experience, it's only prudent to give back in teaching, and must be so fulfilling. And could you please tell us what's the difference from when you started in the mid-2000s and now with advancements in automation and artificial intelligence in the SOC?
Yeah, so just like anything else, good friend of mine mentioned this yesterday. It's just like the car. When an automobile first came out, it was productive, but it was also not very efficient. It was very polluted. It didn't go very far. It was very clunky. And as years go on, we keep making more and more advancements. So now instead of gas, there's potential battery technology, if you want to keep the analogy. So just like that, inside of cybersecurity, we keep adding new cutting edge tools. So we put more stuff on the edge. We've taken stuff from off-prem to the cloud. So security has changed from protecting the four walls, aka your data center, to now protecting your identity that's accessing your software as a service or data that's sitting in public or private clouds.
Exactly. And how best can the current SOC analyst leverage the use of artificial intelligence without compromising the security posture of the institution?
So this is the favorite answer of security. It depends. Depending on the size of the operation, the vector in which you work in. So if you're in retail, finance, healthcare, there's going to be different requirements that allows you to use certain things. So again, time at the regulated utility, there was certain stuff that had to stay on-prem. We weren't allowed to put it in the cloud. We weren't able to use publicly facing tools. Some of that has changed since I left there. Similar with publicly traded companies, they have certain requirements, certain data gathering techniques that they can and can't do. And with the illusion of your question, and at least where I'm thinking to take your question, we now have cloud-based operations that we can use. So we have generative AI tools that may be hosted in public clouds that you can get into subscription models, but you need to understand how data sanitation, data grounding, Do they train off of you? How do they ground that? So a SOC analyst would need to be aware of what the organization is using inside of generative AI, and then how they can leverage it too. Which, to be honest, there's many efficient usage of generative AI for the SOC, and we can dive into those more if you'd like. But they're going to continue to use it. The best way to describe it, it's a tool in your toolbox. Generative AI and automation is not the toolbox.
And that brings me to my question. How do we create and fine-tune SIEM rules to reduce false positives? Because, misconfigured rules sometimes can generate an overwhelming number of alerts. So how do we fine-tune the SIEM rules?
Yeah, so again, we'll keep with the generative AI piece. You can take it for the low-risk task. You can focus on automated routine and low-risk tasks such as the log collection and filtering. So inside of your SIEM and SOAR products. You can use it for basic threat intelligence. You take CVE, CVSS scores, or readouts and search and see what you can find against your logs by loading in to do predictive maintenance of your systems. It also augments the human AI collaboration piece. We're able to integrate with the knowledge we have as humans, as analysts, as practitioners, to augment our hunting and IR efforts, so incident response efforts. It allows us to eventually validate our findings through human judgment and review. So we can take the knowledge we have and compare it to what we know. Again, I tell people never ask a system an answer you don't already know the answer to. And then improves overall accuracy and relevance of our alerts. So we can tune out those false positives. We can get more fidelity on our true positives, and the same with true negatives and as well. So again, it helps you prioritize, and helps you with the transparency. It helps you understand the reason that the alert is firing. It helps you understand the logic that's behind your SIEM. So if you've got content engineering either built into the product or your team is writing it, and it allows you to remove potential biases and errors from your models because you're using machine learning / AI through your SIEM SOAR products to do that as well, which at the end of it is ultimately just to help you get contextual analysis. You're looking to add context to the data that you're collecting. So if you're pulling a network log, you want to understand the patterns of communications from this office to that office, or from this VLAN to that VLAN. Additionally, you're getting user behavior. You're able to understand, is this normal for finance analyst A to do this, why finance analyst B is not? So you're getting some user behavior and activity logs analysis. And then at the end of the day, you're also just reviewing, is this normal system and security events? Is this normal for my EU office to have this type of traffic at this time of day? Is this normal for my Asia or APAC office to have this type of traffic during the day? Allowing you to focus on the anomaly detection and threshold-based alertings, which helps you understand baseload. And do I need another analyst? Do I need to offboard? Which leads into a whole different discussion of, do you keep this inside your house? Do you follow the sun? Do you hire an MSP or MSSP to help you reduce the alert fatigue or the burnout that comes with managing all of your logs essentially and working through them? So really long-winded answer, it just helps clear guidelines and policies. So it allows you to define the roles and responsibilities and expectations. It helps you develop your incident response plans that account for what's going on in your environment, still picking on AI a little bit, and then understanding how your data quality and quantity and data hygiene is inside of your environments. So I think that was a long-winded, but let me know if I missed the mark on the question. Happy to explain it.
Yes, and one thing I'm taking with me is never ask a system the answer you don't know. Because with all this generative AI, we could sometimes maybe be lazy and you think like, I'll just put in my prompts. But if you don't know, then the system is the one training you instead of you doing the work. So how do we
on that one? It's important too. For especially, I know that, for example, non-English speaking or sometimes people who are using different languages may not understand the differences between the language we use. So for example, there's plane and plane. There's PLANE, which is the airplane that you get into and fly around. Then there's plane, PLAIN, which could be it's blank, or it could be the grassy area of it's in the Midwest. So plane. So the model is just doing a 1 to 0 temperature check. When you write your content, your policy, your prompt, it's reading and scoring everything ones and zeros and doing the mathematics to determine what use of the word are you using. Are you talking about an airplane? Are you talking about a plain piece of paper that you're about to write a note on? Are you talking about a plane in which the groundhogs and the deers jump in and feed in?
Exactly. Mhm. So how do we correlate the logs from different sources to identify potential attack? For example, like you analyze and connect data from firewall logs, endpoint detection, authentication logs, intrusion detection to detect suspicious activity. How do we correlate?
So this is inside of your SIEM or SOAR products, or your systems of events or instance and event management tools. That's your SIEM. And then your SOAR, that's your security orchestration, automation, and response tools. So generally your SOAR sits on top of your SIEM. It gives you centralized logging. If you have decentralized logging, you likely have gaps in your analysis. So again, I gave the analogy, or at least example, different floors in your building may be logging different activities, or your EU shop is not using UTC unified time. So you're getting a delay or a shift, and you're seeing logs come in out of sync, which causes investigatory issues when a proxy log or firewall log doesn't match up with the endpoint log because of the timestamp in which it was put into. So making sure that your system that's ingesting those central logs is correlating and converting into a unified time. So either UTC, GMT that you can follow if you have multiple time zones. This even applies to those in the US where you have folks sitting on the East Coast versus the West Coast. You want to make sure that when the logs come in, they correlate. So when you're doing your searches across your MDR, your EDR, your XDR, whatever tool you're looking at, that they line up, because at that point allows you to do your threat hunting, your threat analysis. If they're out of sync, you're going to have a fun day trying to rebuild those logs.
Exactly. That's a nice way to look at it. And what are some of the common ways attackers bypass endpoint security tools?
Sure. So they live off the land, or living off the land binaries. So they're using built-in Windows, Mac, Linux to just live off of what that. So for example, they know that they can use PowerShell, or they can use IMSEC, or they can use WMIC, or they can use another application that the system trusts. And then they can inject into it, they can compromise it, or they can call it outside of a way. So for example, we always use the analogy of, why is my calc.exe trying to call to the web? Does the calculator need to talk to the web? Even better, why is my PDF trying to open a command prompt when I'm opening up a PDF to review for an RFP, a request for proposal, or it's merit season for people? You're looking at your merit inside of your PDF. Why is it trying to immediately do a command.exe and try to pass commands?
Exactly. And how can we automate repetitive SOC tasks to improve efficiency, especially in the cloud security and blockchain monitoring?
So that's, again, it depends on the size of your organization. Are you global? Are you national? Are you international? And then understanding, does your business use blockchain? Does your business need to have this inside of your transactions? So it really comes down to your business mindset. I tell my team, I tell the people I mentor and work with, security is wrong if it impedes the business. So if you're enabling or disabling the business from actually doing what causes them to generate revenue, you're wrong. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you have monitoring in place that doesn't impede them. You want to have certain transactions in place that introduce minimal to no latency in their process, so that they're not having to click a process, go get up, get a cup of coffee, wait on that, sit back down, and then it's done. You don't want to slow down their productivity because you've got a sandboxing technology that's slowing you down, or you've added 12 checks when you really only need 2 checks in the process before you allow that activity to write to the database, go to the web console, go out to the cloud, since you mentioned cloud directly. And then when you're bringing it back in through a zone 3 transfer, which means a web download, you're analyzing that differently, and you're warning the users as needed that this is a potentially unsafe activity because you just downloaded it directly from downloads.com versus going to your software center or your trusted repository to download that binary.
That's true. And mostly with usability, so many checks will drive users away because to them, they want convenience first before anything. So the business user experience should not be affected by the security although it's important, but we should implement security in a way that does not compromise the user experience. That's
Agree.
true. So can you explain how security orchestration, automation, and response works in the SOC?
Yeah. So again, we briefly talked about it. I'll share it again. So that's your security orchestration, automation, and response. It sits on top of your SIEM majority of the time. So it's there to help you collect and aggregate your threat data from various sources. So this could be sensors in your environment. This could be your firewalls. This could be an endpoint agent or other sensors. Your SOAR also helps you with your automated incident response processes, such as containment, eradication, recovery, remediation, the normal stuff that's part of incident response. And then the orchestration piece, this is where your automation comes back in. It allows you to integrate multiple tools and systems into a unified platform to allow, again, for efficient alert triage and incident response planning. That automation, as we've kind of dabbled in, is using machine learning and AI to automate routine tasks for you. So that's the log analysis piece, that's the threat hunting, that's the alerting, that's the scoring, the severity, looking up. And then because I sit in leadership and understand it, it also provides real-time reporting and analytics. I can quickly see the amount of overall traffic, incidents, threats, and how my SOC is performing. So how your security team is analyst A is 12 alerts deep, where analyst B has got 40 alerts, and analyst C has 2. So what does your workload look like? The benefits of your SOAR, it's there really to improve efficiency and to try to help enable more accuracy by reducing that manual effort that's required to do remediations and to do your response. It's also helping to weed out and to suppress the false positives we deal with. We don't want to see that Fletus clicked on the wrong link and tried to log in when it really is something that's very low or little fidelity, which ensures the accuracy of your threat detections. You don't want false positive where it's normal behavior for developer A to launch his IDE and start coding because that's part of his day job. That's what he and she is allowed to do. But at the end of the day, it's there to grab more visibility. As you asked about the centralized alerting, this allows centralized visibility. This provides real-time insights into all the different systems that's inside of your environment, both business systems, IT systems, and security systems, because that data is being piped into that SIEM and then being pushed into your SOAR to allow you to see what's actually happening in your environment. You can get the events per second, you can get the alerts per second, you get your network bandwidth, which allows your analysts, your teams to have better decision making because it's enabling an informed decision making by data-driven analytics, not just this feels right. I think this is right. I've seen this before, because that's where the curse of knowledge comes into play. An experienced analyst may have say, "Oh, I just worked this alert yesterday. I know what this is," and don't do a deep dive and forget to look at the 3 other indicators, and they mislabeled it, and it's really a SEV 2 versus a false positive. So at the end of the day, it's really there to help integrate your existing tools, give automation, and eventually just give real-time reporting at the end of the day.
Sure. That's making our work easier. People working in the SOC, efficiency first. And you say something about the curse of knowledge. Because if you don't know so much, you won't make some decisions. But because you'll be like, "Oh no, I've seen this before," and you end up making.
Yeah, the other thing too with the curse of knowledge, it's easy, and again, I share this often. It's hard to be a novice again. So when you've done something more than once, you think you know it. So I come into the room and immediately say, "Angela, why did you not do this?" And you're like, "Do what?" And I assumed that you knew what this was. So for a real life example, when I say loop, sloop, and pull, you know as an adult that I'm talking about tying your shoe. But if I say that to a 4-year-old, they're like, "What is loop, sloop, and pull?" Like, it's that knowledge of common language. Again, when I walk into an elevator with a C level, they're not asking me to tell them how I block traffic. They're there, they want to know how I'm increasing their return on investment. So it's being able to communicate in a common language and having a common vernacular when you're doing your incident response, you're alerting, so that when you talk to your CFO, you talk to your legal counsel, you talk to the marketing team, you're talking in a language that they understand. So it applies back to your analyst. They got to remove the curse of knowledge, remember what it's like to be a novice, realize that everyone had the expertise. So my lingo is cyber, your lingo may be business, your lingo may be legal. You have your alphabet soup, just like we have our alphabet soup. So first establishing a common language and then getting a common knowledge. So starting with the basics, i.e., this is how you turn on your laptop, and then building on top of it. You don't want to alienate them, but you want to start with the basics. Assume they know nothing. So when you get into the first, treat it as an intro. Have you turned on your laptop? Well, to turn on your laptop, you press the button. You should see a prompt. Oh, it's asking you for a code. Oh, that's considered an MFA, your multi-factor, or your one-time code. Here's how you get your one-time code. Don't just tell them put your one-time code in. How do I get my one-time code? Oh, it's in your authenticator app. So it's teaching them to fish, per se, and you're treating them as peers. That's the other thing that I like to point out is everyone in your company is a blue team member. I just happen to have security in my title, but security is part of your job. So the more and more I can empower my employees, my friends, my family to see something, say something, the easier the SOC's job is. Because security literally starts from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. We're inundated with text messages, phone calls, emails, prompts. As soon as we roll out of bed, and the last thing we see, if you're like me, you probably looked at your phone before you put it on the nightstand and rolled over onto your pillow. So if you're happy or sad, you can inadvertently do an alert fatigue and approve that MFA, or click on that link and don't think anything about it and put it back down and roll over. So really security starts from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And every one of us has a security responsibility. Some of us just happen to have security in our title.
Exactly. Every one of us, everyone around us is part of the blue team. That's true. And what's
the other thing too is we like to use that our employees are our weakest link. No, they're the primary attack vector. So if I treat them as the primary attack vector, I'm moving to a human-centric security model where I'm treating the human as my people, process, and technology. We spend money on process and technology. We don't always spend money on our people. We need to educate our people, train our people, and protect our people, and spend money on our people, myself included, because I'm still an employee of the company. Again, I just happen to have security in my title. So you should spend money on me as the human to make sure that I'm protected with my endpoint, my phone, the web browsers that I'm using to do my job day in and day out.
Exactly. And what steps can we take to better defend against advanced persistent threats? Like you talked about the attack fatigue. You're almost going to bed and just click something mindlessly, innocently, and
so it comes down to, again, as probably one of the previous questions, know your threat landscape, know what organization you work for. Again, certain APTs, or advanced persistent threats, are going to target your finance. So you're going to know that this is how they do it. Predominantly, it starts with a phishing attack. That's why I said security starts from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. A good APT is going to done their recon, and they're going to know that Angela signs on at 8:05 in the morning. So I'm going to send Angela a phish at 8:04. So it'll be at the top of her inbox. I know Angela goes and gets coffee every day at 1:15. I'm going to send Angela a text message at 1:16 while she's waiting at Starbucks line to pick up her coffee and see if she'll click on it. I know Angela gets into her car at 4:35 to drive to pick up her daughter at 5:00, and she goes through this toll road. I'm going to send her a toll scam text because I know Angela drives through this road, through a toll road. I'm going to say that she forgot to pay her toll. All this is just learning their environments. So really, again, it goes back to the human factor. APTs can attack anyone. They generally don't attack me and you. They attack our organization. But I'm going to treat you as the executive. So every analogy I just gave, you're the executive who does this daily routine. You're my CFO in this case. I'm trying to get you to change a routing number to do a BEC tech, a business email compromise, where I just funneled X amount of money out of your organization because you didn't follow your internal processes to have two people check before you change the ACH to route that money. So, or I get you to change the decimal from 1 million to 10 million.
It's interesting because we've had an attack like that in our country last year where payment details were compromised,
it happens more likely than not, and it usually starts small. So if you look at most of the major attacks, they didn't immediately go after the well. They didn't immediately try to take on the C-level. They come in with a phishing, a recon, some kind of supply chain. Most attacks are not attacking the big person. They're going to come in through a back door or a weak door.
Operational level.
Most of the time, that's a supply chain attack. They're hitting your third party vendors. Most of our attacks in the last 10 years have been third party risk. It's the HVAC, it's the cleaning company, it's the food and beverage who service you, or in the case of some larger university or US, companies, it was their HVAC, it was their Orion agent, to pick on a big one, where it was a supply chain issue. Those are hard, but that was the activists, the advanced persistent, knowing this is what they needed to get into to get their code or their malware deployed inside of the environment to get a foothold and get a command and control and persistence.
Sure. Thank you so much, Fletus, for this very insightful interview. Could you have any parting shots, any incident that shaped your career, maybe?
Oh, I have several that I can talk through. Most of them
Yes.
are just learning experiences. So early on in my career, I had the opportunity to sit through several big events and just glean and learn and ask questions. So I tell anyone right now, have the opportunity, even if it's it's 5 o'clock and you want to go home, maybe stay till 6 o'clock and just watch. If you have the opportunity to sit with your security operations center or your physical security, because incidents happen both cyber and physical, and just learn what it's like to be a day in their life. What is it like to walk in their shoes for a day? And you'll get a better perspective of what's going on. I always tell people, when I worked in IT, it was nice knowing what my other IT teams had to deal with when an event was declared. When I got into cyber, because I knew that the governance risk, that the apps teams, that the ops teams, this is their procedure, I knew what documentation I needed to start with, what questions I needed to ask to make sure it was more fluid. So my not really incident is the fact that I learned my business, or mined my business, to use the analogy of a regulated utility. We did coal-based stuff, but understanding that if Angela works as an IT ops analyst, Angela's process is to file a ticket to get approval before she does what. So I want to make sure Angela has the ticket. If it was a governance, I want to make sure that there's a policy and procedure that can be referenced before it's approved. So I need to make sure I call out the policy and procedure or the standard in which I'm working with. That goes with legal as well. If it was the apps team, I want to make sure that they're giving them the proper scanning capabilities to make sure that they can say, yes, this is a higher critical vulnerability, not just a low and medium. I've done my due diligence to weed out the low hanging fruit and say, you really only need to capture these 12 things, not the 400 I found. So just taking time to speak to them and not over them and not under them, so that they represent and respect you as a peer when the event happens. Also, it's tabletops, practice, bring people in, test a real scenario so that they understand who's on point, who's on first, who's on second, who's taking the lead. When the IR event happens, your incident response plan is initiated. Then at some point, it's going to turn from an IR to an IM. It's going to be incident management, and that's when you're bringing in your big guns. That's your PR, your comms, your finance team, potentially external counsel. Probably at this point, maybe bringing in law enforcement when it gets to that large. So it's really practicing, practice, and then knowing what you need to know.
Exactly. I'd like to know, as computing has moved closer to the edge, have you found yourself training more like customers more than employees of companies? How has it
Oh,
been
again,
the last
it
5
really
years?
depends again. It depends again. So the analogy I use, we all know security now. I mean,
Yeah.
and one thing that was pointed out by a mentee of mine yesterday,
Mm.
the media and everything likes to say this is a young organization. No, I have folks who probably have been in this career for 40 plus years. So that's a generational thing. So they're going to look at things different than I'm going to look at it. And I've only been in it 20. Then the people who've been in it for 5 years are going to look at different from the people who've been in it one. So we have at least 4 generations currently still working in cyber. So you got to think about that. When you have 3 to 4 generations who are still actively in the field, are going to look at problems differently. So we're going to have to solve them differently. It comes back down to communication. You need to know how to communicate. Some are going to want the email. Some are going to want the text message. Some are going to want the phone call. Some are going to want the IM. Some are going to want an email and you walk to their desk. Some are going to want the Slack message or Teams message and you call them, because they need to know that they stack in the way that they stack. And then you need to understand, if you email, what is their prioritization? I had a former colleague of mine. If you don't bullet it, I'm not reading it. If you give me more than a paragraph, I'm not going to read it, because I only have time to read the first paragraph. So you make sure that you do your executive summary at the top of the email for any action items, or you bullet the list, because that was their communication style. They needed to see listed items because they were task oriented. They didn't want to read a novel. They didn't want to read the book. Same with Slack messages or Teams messages. Some people think those are passive comms. They're not going to look at them until it's lunchtime. It's the end of the day because that's not their mindset to be Slack or Teams first. They're email first. Well, on the flip side, if you're not an email first company, you may never check your email because you don't get email. The only email you get are spam or external emails that you don't care about because almost all internal communications is coming through Teams, Slack, Discord, Signal, whatever your company is using for unified communication. So it's really going back to communication is key.
Thank you so much, Fletus. It has been an honor to host you at the Cyber Weekly.
My privilege.
Thank you.